You guys live in an amazing imaginary world.
You are like a guy who got broken up with and can't get over it. This is so deranged.
J.D. Vance will sort of inherit the Trumpian mantle, so to speak.
I think that Josh Shapiro would have been a much better pick.
He sounds like
nuts.
He sounds
Totally
like the very
nuts.
lunatic he's talking about.
America, Trump already tried
Sorry, your name is...
Piers Morgan has a fiery debate with Cenk Uygur, Clay Travis, Dinesh D'Souza, and the daughter of Kellyanne Conway, Claudia Conway. Let's take a look at the highlights, debunk, and talk about it. Stick around until at least the middle of the video to see the absolutely crazy statistic Clay makes about Americans wanting Trump assassinated. Please like and subscribe to help my channel grow. Thank you.
Kamala Harris was last seen at the US-Mexico border in 2021. She's previously explained her failure to visit by pointing out she hasn't been to Europe either.
Harris visited France in 2021, Poland and Romania in 2022, and Germany in 2023 to engage with European leaders on different subjects.
Donald Trump's not convinced. In a typically understated fashion, he responded to the border visit by declaring Harris to be mentally impaired and demanding she be prosecuted.
Imagine if Harris or Biden declared Trump was mentally impaired and needed to be prosecuted. You would never hear the end of it. This is just another normal day for Trump.
This was a woman who, when she was running in 2019, Piers, didn't just say she basically wanted a wide open border. She said that any migrants that were being held in prison should get taxpayer-funded gender reassignment surgery.
Kamala has never advocated for an open border. In fact, when visiting Guatemala in 2021, she told potential migrants, "Do not come."
It also reminds everybody just how bad the southern border crisis has been under the Biden administration. It's indisputable. The numbers don't lie.
The Biden administration has not been as strong as it should be on the border. However, the numbers do in fact lie. I made a video yesterday debunking Laura Ingram's Fox News rant regarding the border, where she makes multiple lies. Check it out after this video if you like.
Over 400,000 criminals, 13,000 convicted murderers, 16,000 rapists all entering this country and starting to wreak havoc all over the citizens of the United States.
What Clay fails to mention is that the numbers he's citing are from encounters, which means those individuals are either in custody or have been sent back to where they come from. This was specifically detailed in the letter sent to Representative Gonzalez by the director of ICE.
I think it standing alone is going to cost her Arizona and Nevada. I think she's going to lose Georgia, North Carolina, and it all comes down to whether Trump can win one of the three states, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, or Michigan. I think he can. I think this issue is the single worst, right alongside of the economy, for Kamala and why she doesn't deserve a promotion.
Yeah, I mean, Cenk, the thing I would say, if I was looking at this with no horse in the race, which I don't, despite your frequent attempts to claim that I do, would be that by going there now, it looks like political expediency.
I don't do the usual partisan stuff. So first of all, on immigration, the Biden administration did not do a good job for at least a couple of years in between. The numbers have come back down now.
I agree with Cenk that the Biden administration has not done a good job on immigration. Hopefully the Kamala administration will do better and be stronger on the border.
You look, Kamala Harris came to Donald Trump's position. I'm not thrilled about that, but that's a fact, right? And then Donald Trump said, "Oh yeah, I don't want my own position," because he wanted to help himself in the election rather than protect you guys. He cares more about himself than the voters every single time. And there is no excuse you guys have for Donald Trump killing his own immigration bill other than his greed and his selfishness and his narcissism.
Kamala Harris has indeed shifted her rhetoric and policies regarding the border security, reflecting a more stringent approach that aligns her somewhat closer to Donald Trump's immigration stance.
I think that Kamala Harris going to the border is part of a strategy in which she is relying on the media to do work for her. And here's what I mean. The ordinary American is not happy with the way the country is going. And normally this leads to throw the bums out because the people who are in power are doing a bad job.
Thank you for pointing out the strategy of basically every politician, Dinesh. The people who were in power before were doing a bad job. That's exactly why Trump was thrown out and Biden was elected.
The one thing the Democrats have is virtual unanimity in the mainstream media. And so they're counting on a narrative that basically says to the American people, don't believe your lying eyes. Don't believe your pocketbook. Don't believe the crime that you see in cities. Don't believe the hordes of people swarming across the border, the reports of criminals. Instead, accept this portrait of a new and improved Kamala Harris that we're going to give you, this smoke and mirrors, this Kamala at the border talking tough, So they're counting on this fictional portrait, this movie portrait of Kamala Harris to trump, if I can use that term, the observations and experience of the American people. They're counting on the American people being complete and total suckers.
Regardless of the reason, it is true Americans have been faced with much higher inflation under Joe Biden. Many people argue that giant corporations are price gouging, which is why corporate profits are at a record high. Trump gave corporations massive tax cuts and wants to give them more, but workers' wages did not increase and prices went up, not down. They just pocketed the money and ran. Kamala has said she will fight inflation and price gouging.
We can't really call her a chameleon. If we're going to call her a chameleon, we have to call Trump a chameleon and JD Vance a chameleon and everybody else a chameleon because
but I would.
they're all flip-flopping.
Hang on, I would.
Yeah.
Cenk
Exactly.
wasn't smart enough or calm enough to ask me. You have done. So let me just, for the record, I think they're all pretty chameleon-like. Trump has U-turned on many things. Right, so's J.D. Vance, not least calling Trump Hitler. So yeah, I think they've all got a chameleon trait. It just so happens, and that Boy George is actually a friend of mine.
That you only named Kamala.
Pierce loves to pretend he's in the middle and has no side that he's on, but it's clearly a lie.
Conveniently, you found no derogatory nicknames for Donald Trump or J.D. Vance. You just happened to find one for Kamala Harris.
I've just said to you.
It's okay, Piers, it's okay. He's your friend. You guys did a show together. You're going to have access to him. We get it. You want Trump to win. Let's move on.
Immigration's not as important to Gen Z voters as it is to all registered voters. It ranks about 61% of voters rank it as very important. But with Gen Z voters, I mean, they're not really looking at this, but I'm looking at this and I'm saying, why? You know, her campaign's been pretty smart, but, you know, back to what everybody else was saying, I think this was just like, you know, a little ploy for the campaign, just going to Douglas, Arizona and saying, hey, I'm at the border.
Gen Z is more pro-immigration than other generations. This PRRI.org study shows that 66% of Gen Z believes immigrants strengthen the U.S., while 50% of millennials and 41% of older adults think so.
Trump's been giving a number of speeches in the last few days, which contained, you know, the usual greatest hits, but also some slightly insane moments. Let's take a look at some of the stuff that happened at the weekend.
Joe Biden became mentally impaired. Kamala was born that way. Okay. She was born that way. And if you think about it, only a mentally disabled person could have allowed this to happen to our country. Anybody would know this.
If any Democrat said something like this, not only would Republicans be calling for their immediate resignation, so would a lot of Democrats themselves.
I think it's an effective attack. I think the word choice, as you well know, with Donald Trump is sometimes the bull in the china shop aspect of his entire personality. He is an entertainer. That's at a rally.
These people will give Trump a pass on anything because he's an entertainer.
Kamala is not actually able to cite some sort of mental and physical cognitive decline to explain away why she's been wrong on everything. Kamala's been wrong on every issue. I mean, I would ask anybody who's supporting her, name one thing that Kamala Harris has done really well.
Kamala, while not being perfect, has done things like start initiatives to help small businesses, led efforts to address the root cause of immigration, such as the Central America Forward Act, which helps create local jobs and economic opportunities for people living in South America, gun violence prevention, maternal health initiatives, and a lot more.
She now wants to build a border wall. She doesn't want to ban straws. She wants to allow fracking. She now doesn't believe in reparations. Basically, everything Kamala Harris has ever said in her entire political career, up until 2020, she doesn't believe in anymore.
Harris' policy shifts can be viewed as strategic adaptations to the evolving political climate and public sentiment. She wants to win the election. All politicians do it, including Trump, who used to be for universal health care, raising minimum wage, taking action on climate change, and protecting American jobs, all of which he did U-turns on and failed to deliver.
Here's the thing, Cenk. I know you're pragmatic. You obviously don't want Trump to win. I sort of feeling you're holding your nose with Kamala Harris. You don't want her to be the Democrat nominee, but she is. Therefore, you kind of, well, she'll have to win because I hate Trump so much. She's not a convincing candidate. I mean, she is a massive flip-flop, but she deserves the chameleon title. Every interview is full of word salad nonsense. You know, with Trump, you kind of know what he is now. He served 4 years. We know him good, bad, and ugly. Kamala Harris does not. She wouldn't inspire me to open a crisp packet. I have to be honest. Now, am I wrong?
Yeah, so guys, you're looking at it wrong, of course, I think. So, but let me explain because it's a little bit more complicated. I think that Kamala Harris is a typical politician, and that's not a compliment. I think she's an establishment Democrat, and I think 90% of politicians are establishment Democrats or Republicans. So if you're someone who's on the left or progressive and you think she's going to deliver unicorns and rainbows, no, she's going to deliver for her donors. So then if you're at home, you're saying, oh my God, that means I vote for Trump, right? No. The reason I'm voting for Kamala Harris is because Donald Trump is literally mentally impaired. He's a danger to this country, to our democracy, and that is not just a talking point. He's set to terminate all the rules, regulations, and articles of the Constitution when he didn't win.
Yeah, but he's not going to do that, and you know he's not going to do that.
What do you
that's
mean?
not what he meant.
But,
this is the problem, though.
So, guys,
when you go after Trump.
So this is the problem, Piers. This is the problem. Whenever we're talking about criticizing Kamala Harris, you guys let me and everybody else go for 20 minutes. And then whenever I say the first thing about Trump, everybody jumps in to cut it off. That's how this thing is so biased. So let me tell you, you want to talk about mental impairment? Come on, guys, it should have been over when he said, let's put disinfectant inside our bodies. He's a very, very dumb man.
He didn't say that.
He thinks that clean coal is you take out coal and you scrub it clean. He thinks the F-35 stealth fighter is invisible to the naked eye like Wonder Woman. He took a dementia test and thought it was an IQ test. The other day, he said that the audience in the debate went crazy for him. There was no audience in the debate. The man has significant mental problems. I'm not going to vote for a borderline lunatic. So that's why this conversation is nonsense. A typical politician versus a guy who tried to terminate the Constitution and is a verifiable lunatic. Not a hard question.
This is one main difference between many people on the left and many people on the right. People on the left often come to grips with mistakes from leadership and want them to improve, while a majority of people who believe in Trump have a hard time criticizing him on anything. Trump has said things that show he does not know what clean coal is, and has said they take out the coal and clean it. He also made statements suggesting he is confused about the F-35 and how it works.
Well, there are certain aspects of Trump that are exactly the same. I mean, you have to look at this guy as a kind of stand-up comedian. When he was making the lines about Kamala, you could tell he was getting the reaction that he was going for. And he's genuinely insightful and funny. He has a good sense of the one-liner, and he delivers it almost to perfection. Now, the point is, people said a lot of the same things even about Reagan. You know, the guy's crazy, he's demented. So Trump is not outside the mainstream in his political rhetoric.
I agree that Trump is genuinely funny, but it doesn't mean you give him a pass when he says crazy stuff. He is certainly outside of the mainstream in his political rhetoric, which is why you had to go all the way back to Ronald Reagan to find any relevant examples.
If Trump was going to do all the things you claim he's going to do, he'd have done them.
Yeah, but he did. It's you guys pervert reality in a way that is amazing. You pretend that he.
Can you stop saying you guys?
Can I?
Dinesh has just said that.
You just did it, Piers. How do I not
what?
include you when you just did it?
I literally
so can
said.
I answer the question?
You said that Trump wants to undo every part of the Constitution. I'm telling you that is completely insane for you to say that. Utterly nonsense.
You're insane.
He's never
You're
going
a
to
lunatic.
do it. He's not going to do it. You know it. I know it.
Okay, guys, let me just address the audience. Okay, these guys are trying to brainwash you into forgetting the things that Donald Trump actually did. He actually did January 6th. They actually did rush the Capitol. They did get inside the Capitol. People did die. He did say, let's terminate the Constitution when he didn't win. He did have a 3-hour meeting about installing martial law and rolling out the tanks. Everyone in his administration said they would resign immediately if he did that, which General Michael Flynn suggested. He actually, when his chief of staff said, your fans are looking to murder your vice president, he said he deserves it. So you guys are pretending he didn't do these monstrous things, which he already did.
Actually,
and
Cenk,
Piers, if you ask me why I'll never vote for Trump, because he hates America, and he already proved it. When he lost, he said, my government, I'm going to smash it to pieces if I can't have it, because he's a spoiled little baby. You're pretending like it didn't happen when it already happened.
Following the election, there were reports that Trump and some of his allies considered invoking martial law to overturn the election election results.
Trump had the greatest American economy of all time. Everybody was doing better. I think that's why so many people are yearning for that era in many ways.
The pandemic makes it hard to completely understand or blame either side on this issue. However, while Biden has created many more jobs, inflation has gone through the roof under his administration. Many people blame COVID and the war in Ukraine.
For 6 months, BLM effectively took over much of American cities, and virtually nothing happened to them.
The data shows that over 14,000 protesters tied to BLM were arrested.
30% of Democrats said they wished that Donald Trump had been assassinated.
Claudia, you're in a...
Nobody's ever said that. Clay made that up. He totally made it up. Nobody's ever actually said that.
The only information on this imaginary 30% poll is on unheard.com, where the author states its existence, but gives no information or details beyond that.
41% of Republicans said it's time for political violence. Republicans openly have been talking about Second Amendment remedies for people that they disagree with. They've been egging on violence. Donald Trump laughed about how Nancy Pelosi's husband was smashed in with a hammer. So the right wing loves violence.
Recent studies indicate that a significant portion of Republicans express support for political violence. Let's remember the lock her up chants and stuff like that came from Donald Trump.
I thought Clay raised a very good point there about the utter hypocrisy between the Democrat view of January 6th and the Democrat view of the BLM riots. Either you oppose rioting full stop or you don't. And the way that the rioters for BLM throughout that period were treated compared to the January 6th rioters was clearly demonstrably different, wasn't it?
Like I said, 14,000 protesters were arrested in regard to BLM riots.
Now, when it comes to the BLM situation, the original protests were like the original people listening to Donald Trump. They came out because they were deeply concerned about the injustice against African Americans in this country, and they were right. Then at some point, a smaller group of people committed violence. Police went to go arrest those people, and they should. Of course they should. The one problem that I thought persisted after that initial outburst was some parts of like Portland and Seattle were taken over, and the police let them do that for some period of time, and that was nuts. And so that's when I started saying, guys, this is not progressive. This is not the right way to go. We're not for lawlessness.
Trump gets away with everything. He called Kamala a mentally disabled person. He said she wasn't black. He says, look at what happened in Springfield, Ohio, you know, with the schools on lockdowns and the threats. And it's ridiculous. And he's the only person who can get away with all of this. Do I think that Kamala going to the border was a political stunt? Absolutely. But when I weigh the two, to me, it's not comparable.
I feel similar to this young lady. I don't like Kamala Harris or Joe Biden. They weren't my choice. However, when you compare them with Trump and the people around him, it's an easy choice for me to make.
We know from a note that the second shooter made, or was planning to shoot him, that he was using exact phraseology from Kamala Harris, literally repeating it in his note.
The second man who was going to shoot Donald Trump on the golf course did in fact write a note that talked about Trump being bad for democracy, and the note echoed a lot of the talking points used against him.
Cenk, I want to play you a different clip. This is from John Kerry, obviously former Democrat grandee. He took part in the World Economic Forum panel on green energy. And near the end of the panel, a member of the audience asked what could be done to push back against disinformation surrounding climate change online. And he said this.
There's a lot of discussion now about how you curb those entities in order to guarantee that you're going to have, some accountability on facts, et cetera. But look, if people go to only one source and the source they go to is sick and, has an agenda and they're putting out disinformation, our First Amendment stands as a major block to the ability to be able to just, hammer it out of existence.
This is not a good look. You should not be saying things like that. Let's see how Cenk reacts.
I thought that was an extraordinary thing to say out loud, Cenk. I mean, you got a guy who was nearly president of the United States basically saying the First Amendment is a real problem.
No. So first of all, look, the establishment has this certain agenda, and they put out a massive amount of propaganda to back that in mainstream media. And then if anybody opposes it from the so-called populist right and the actual populist left, they hammer it down. But in this case, John Kerry was saying, hey, look, the guys like Dinesh D'Souza do these outrageous lies like 2,000 Mules, but there's not much we could do about it because of the First Amendment. So he's not saying get rid of the First Amendment. He never said that. And by the way, if he did say that, I would be 100% opposed to him.
Basically, Cenk is saying that the mainstream media already does do their best to hammer down free speech that disagrees with their narrative. John Kerry is a part of that. However, in this instance, John Kerry was talking about extreme rhetoric and not talking about getting rid of the First Amendment.
I believe in the First Amendment. And I believe it is the single most important right that we have in the United States. And I believe that if you're only going to be a single issue voter, to me, supporting the candidate who endorses the marketplace of ideas to the largest degree is the candidate you should be voting for. And that is clearly Donald Trump here.
Kamala Harris.
Kamala
No,
has
that's definitely
said
Kamala
that there
Harris.
needs to be more censorship. No. Kamala Harris has said that there needs to be more
She never said
censorship.
Harris is an advocate for initiatives that address online harassment and abuse. She also thinks it's important we do more to hold social media accountable when they have such a huge influence on public discourse.
Biden actually took far more dictatorial powers during COVID than Trump did, and the left cheered him on.
Almost every country in the world took measures against COVID. It was a scary time and nobody really knew what to do.
I think Tim Walz, in all honesty, Piers, is the dumbest person who has ever been on American presidential ticket in my life. I think the challenge that J.D. Vance
Trump,
is going to have,
right?
J.D., whatever you think about him, is Trump is a super bright guy. You can't succeed in business like he has without a lot of talent.
Well, he didn't.
Tim Walz is a moron.
He's a miserable
Tim Walz is
failure
an
in
absolute
business.
moron.
6 major
He is going to
bankruptcies.
get embarrassed, I think.
In my opinion, Tim Walz is a great guy, and Kamala made the best decision going with Tim Walz as vice president.
The thing that J.D. Vance is going to have to be careful of is that he doesn't pummel Tim Walz so much that people start feeling bad for him. Walz hasn't done a single solo interview with a national media figure since he was elevated. This is a guy who lied about his military service, who is utterly unqualified to be a heartbeat away from the presidency. Of everybody on tickets, I don't think Kamala's qualified. I think Tim Walz, her worst decision. She should have taken Josh Shapiro. I think he's going to get embarrassed on Tuesday night.
I predict that Tim Walz destroys J.D. Vance in the debate tomorrow. Go ahead and comment what the outcome was.
You guys live in an amazing imaginary world. They're like, if Trump wanted to be dictator, he would probably, if he lost an election, have somebody or a lot of people rush the Capitol and then not stop them, even as they're trying to murder his vice president. And he would try to terminate the Constitution. He did do that. He did all of that. And you guys don't acknowledge it. First Amendment. Kamala Harris has never said anything against the First Amendment. Donald Trump threatens to imprison anyone who criticizes him. You guys live in a delusional, imaginary world.